everybody, and welcome to episode 38 of the Open Play Podcast. We're down a few people this week, but we have a special guest host with us. First off, Preston's here like usual. Say hey, Preston.
Hey, Preston.
And we have a host by the name of Emery with us to talk to Drukhari later this episode. Say hey, Emery.
Hey.
So, let's talk some hobby stuff. I've started to work on my model finally for the little competition we're doing, because, I started on time, unlike some people who remain nameless that are not on this episode. What you got going on, Preston? Anything new?
Not this week in particular. I was running around a lot, so I still have the Morkanaut sitting on my table, glaring at me in his primed and cobweb-infested glory. So I'm hoping to get that cleaned up and start to work on that this week for Will. Beyond that, nothing too crazy going on.
And what about you, Emery? What you working on these days?
Grey Knights. Grey Knights is the word of the week. Trying something new. I've been playing Drukhari since start of the edition, so I'm working on painting up some Grey Knights to try out.
Very cool. So no real news. I still want to wait a good week or so before we actually start talking about where the meta currently is. I don't know that we still have enough current data to really see how it's shaken out, but I know Emery and probably Preston, you both have gotten more games than I have recently. How do points changes for your armies that you're playing feel to you currently with how the meta is?
For me in particular, I haven't touched Sisters really since the points updates. I don't have Triple Exorcist, nor do I really particularly want to play it. It's going to be a slow few months for me, and I feel like by the time I would get 3 Exorcists done in January, they would just get obliterated, so we're just sort of going to skip this part of the the patch for Sisters. For Tau, they pretty much stayed the same. I added some Kurt to my list because they went down 10 points, which is sort of an obscene amount. We'll see how those do soon, probably this weekend.
What about you, Emery? How's stuff feeling with what you've been playing recently outside of Drukhari and including Drukhari?
I mean, I think the points, they could have been a little worse for Drukhari, honestly. I basically just lost, one utility unit in my list. I actually haven't played a game yet because I've been feeling a little bit under the weather this past week. But, in theory, I think the list is still good. I think it's, I'll probably stick with the same. It's not enough changes to, completely rework my list. So I think I'll just stick with the same list, drop a utility unit, probably Mandrakes or a Venom. And I don't see myself losing any of the games that I would have lost just because of that one utility unit. So I think they're still in a good spot.
How much point-wise does your list go up? 100 points? Over? Under?
Under. I think a lot of people probably playing Drukhari, they were probably taking the Court of the Archon, which I was never a huge fan of. They got hit. The Archons got hit. So you're probably running 3 Archons with the Court in that list. So your list probably went up over 100. I don't use the Court, so mine was 85. And my GT list was already 1985. So I really lost 70 points, which is Mandrakes or Venom.
And so as we get into it, how about we go back a step? Let's introduce you, talk a little bit about yourself, your history playing the game, and just who you are.
Sure. My name's Emery. I play for Iron Claws Wargaming. It's a small club that myself and a few other guys started at the start of 10th down here in Carolina. Basically just started playing at the beginning of 10th. Really didn't play much in 9th. I did own models in 9th and did play a few games, but it was all just with my buddy, nothing competitive in 9th. I was really just building up my army, painting my Drukhari at that point, and then because I obviously, I knew 10th was coming, I didn't really want to learn all the rules for 9th and then have to relearn them for 10th. So started at the beginning of 10th, really just dove head first into it. I've been, since the start of 10th, I've gone to probably 2 or 3 tournaments a month, so almost every weekend. But yeah, 2 weeks ago, got my first big win. It was a GT at Call to Arms, so that was pretty cool with my Drukhari. Won quite a few RTTs locally. I do travel around a lot, so I drive around. I went up to Delaware and went to an RTT. I'm kind of just, people laugh at me because I'll drive 4 or 5 hours to go to an RTT, but I really don't mind. I've got nothing better to do, so that's that. But, I really just play only Drukhari. I've been playing Drukhari since the start of 10th. I have over 200 games played with my Drukhari. I did win events with Real Space Raid even before the Sky Splinters came out, so it's not like I just hopped on the bandwagon after Sky Splinter came out. But yeah, that's pretty much me. I play a lot with Preston, actually. We live sort of nearby. We play quite a few games together. I go to a lot of the gem events. I'm a local there. Yeah, that's pretty much me.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's get into your last GT winning list you had. So can you tell us, what list you ran, why you ran what you ran, and how you did other than winning?
Sure. So, yeah, I'll talk about the list. Obviously, this was before, I got to preface, this was before the points changes, like I said. This was about 2 weeks ago, so it was the last event before the new points were in effect, I guess. So I'll go down the list here. I was running 2 Archons, one with the Nightmare Shroud, which makes it to where they can't be overwatched when they get out of the ship. One with Spiteful Raider, just gives you an extra pain token when you kill something on objective. You got the Beast Pack. I was running 30 Cabalites. I think that's really the sweet spot that I found was 30. 20 really just was good, but like 30 was great, and any more than 30 is really just too many. 3 Venoms, so every Cabalites, all the Cabalites get split into 6 units of 5. You take the ones with the good guns, put them in the Venoms, and then you walk around with the guys with the rifles and do actions and whatnot. I run 2 units of 10 Incubi. I think that's really where my list differs from other people. I've seen a lot of people running 1 10-man, 2 5-mans, 1 10-man, 1 5-man. I really haven't seen that many people running 2 10-mans, both in Raiders. I think that's really one of the big things that I changed with my list. 2 units of Mandrakes. I got 3 units of 5 Scourge, 10 with the Dark Lance, 5 with Haywire. I think that's pretty much the community consensus. Like, if you're going to take 15 Scourge, you're going to take 10 with Dark Lance, 5 with Haywire. Just because when you run into those vehicles that are like toughness 12 and higher, you don't want to be wounding them on 4s and 5s with Dark Lances. So that's really when the Haywire shines, is just putting dev wounds on really tough vehicles.
There's a lot of vehicles that have that 2-up save in cover, and Scourge, unfortunately, don't go in transport, so they don't get away to ignore cover. So Haywire also help you shore up that niche where you could be taking 3-ups against Dark Lances.
Yep, 100%. And then, so if people don't know what Haywire is, because I know a lot of people just aren't familiar with Drukhari, it's anti-vehicle 4-up devastating wounds, 24-inch range. So every 4-up on the wound roll is 3 devastating wounds against any vehicle. So you can, with Scourge, you're getting 8 shots, you're hitting on 4s, most likely you're re-rolling with a pain token, so hitting on 4s, re-rolling, wounding on 4s, average is out about 9, so 3 wounds going through, that's 9 dev wounds to a vehicle, average. And then of course you're popping back behind the wall, so you really, unless you have indirect, there's really not a great way to deal with that. They're going to be hitting you almost every turn. And then we got a unit of 2 Talos with Haywire as well, but their Haywire is twin linked, so they get to hit you on 4s, hopefully re-rolling with a pain token, and then they're wounding you on 4s, re-rolling because of twin linked with anti-4 devastating wounds. So that twin link just makes it like a little more reliable. It's not so swingy because when you're hitting on 4s and you're wounding on 4s with or without rerolls, it's very swingy, like how much damage you're actually doing. But the twin linked Haywire on the Talos really just give it like a reliable like 6 to 9. And then I just round it out with a Chronos. The Chronos gives you the reroll for pain token. If you spend a pain token within 9 inches of the Chronos, you get to roll a dice, and on a 4-up he gives it back like you didn't spend it. And then on the FAQ for the new update, GW did rule it the way I've been playing it, where you can then spend those pain tokens again right away once you get them back. It's not like you have to wait until next turn, because it says it happens at the start of the phase, so it all happens at the same time. So like he's refunding them as soon as you're getting them back, and it's still the start of the phase. You're the active player, so you should be able to keep spending them. And GW did say that that's the way it is now. So that's the list. Really just like the way I play my list is I'm really just looking to turn 1, I'm looking to get the beast pack up because they move 12, scout 9, go through walls because they're beasts. So I'm really just looking to push them forward, pin in what they can, or tie up what they can with a charge, because they also get reroll charge. And I'm looking to create a turn of space so that behind that wall of beast pack, I can then go and sticky my secure objective, possibly sticky the center, and sticky my home objective with the Cabalites. The Cabalites have a cool rule where they don't actually have to get out of the Venom to sticky an objective. They can sticky it from inside the Venom. So even if I just have the Cabalites inside the Venom and the Venom within range of the objective, they can sticky that objective, which is very, very nice, because if they're outside the Venom, they're dead. So the Venom actually has a chance of living. Not a great chance, but a chance. So that's basically, that's the design I'm looking for. And then once you come try and take those sticky objectives off of me, I'm looking to hit you hard with either the two unit of Talos, 10 Incubi in a Raider, getting out and re-rolling hits and wounds, and then hopping back in the Raider, or just, the mass firepower between the Scourge, all the Venom shooting because they're open-topped, and the Talos. That's really how the list works. What I've found is that 5-man Incubi with the Archon and a Venom just don't consistently kill stuff. That seems to be the way people are leaning, especially now with the points increases, but I just don't think that 5 Incubi and a Venom is the way to go. I think it's just the two 10-mans. You got 2 chances to really come out and hit something hard. Realistically, you probably have closer to 4 chances because you're coming out, you're spending the stratagem for Assault Ramp. You're going 14 inches. You're getting out 3. So you're going 17 inches. Then you can charge up to 12. And then you always want to put yourself in the position and with the CP to get back in the Raider. And then hopefully, once they come out to try to kill the Raider, you have it parked close to a wall so you can dump the Incubi out on the other side of the wall. And then you get one more chance to come back out and hit them. So realistically, if everything goes correctly, you really have 4 turns of hitting something in the center or over by their objective with 10 Incubi and Archon rerolling everything. And usually if you get those 4 turns, the game's over. If you're hitting someone 4 times with 10 Incubi and Archon, whether they're getting out and getting Lance or not, if they allow you to do that for 4 turns, their army is just decimated. It makes them come to you, basically, is the main thing, because they know that you can get to them basically anywhere on the board, because you have Assault Ramp coming out of the Raider, and then you can hop back in, because your threat range is so far, with the Scourge 36-inch shooting behind them, moving 14, hopping back behind the wall, then shooting 36, and with the threat range that the Incubi and the Archon has, it really puts the pressure on them to come to you, because if they don't, you'll just pick them apart.
So with that list, what's the army/detachment you don't want to see when you set up the table? Like, what army do you not want to play against?
Yeah, so the biggest one in the old meta was Blood Angels. And I actually did play them in the GT. It was Blood Angels because, like I said, like turn 1, I want to pin you in with the Beast Pack. But you can't pin in Marines that all have jump packs, right? Because they all fly. So there's really no way for me to deal with... There's no way to stop... It really forces me to come to them because I can't screen out their jump pack Marines, and they have the same threat range that I do because they're moving 12 and they're charging, right? They can just fly over the screens. So that's really the list that I don't want to see. Also, the other thing would be anything with indirect, which was really, you really just didn't see before this update. But I think what Preston was talking about at the beginning of the recording was, I think you will see that now with Sisters. I think you will see Exorcists make a comeback.
The other thing that Blood Angels did that I don't think Drukhari really liked at all was their Inferno pistols. You could run... Normally, Drukhari gets a big deal of survivability because the transport's behind a wall, and it's really hard to get enough units, to threaten the transport, and then threaten, like, every place the Incubi or whatever could get out. But Blood Angels can run up their 12-inch moving jump packs, kill a transport, whether it's a Venom or a Raider, with Inferno pistols, and then charge the Incubi inside.
Yeah, the big thing is, like, can you crack the transport and kill the contents? And Blood Angels can also, like Preston's saying, can also reliably do that because, if you can get within 6 inches for the old Inferno pistols, when the whole squad had them, if you can get within that 6 inches, they're just dead. Like, they just look at a transport of mine and it's dead. There's no, ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're going to kill it, and then they're going to charge the content.
What about Space Wolves? How do you feel against Space Wolves in games with Wolf Jail being a thing for, I don't know how many months now?
Yeah, so Space Wolves it can be a tricky one. I would say it's like a 50-50. I would consider that like no one's really favored. I actually did play in a team tournament, and we had our Matrix or whatever, and I had it down as like a 50-50 matchup for me. I played quite a few games against Space Wolves. I think I've won majority of them. But I think skill does come into play there, but I think on an even playing field it's about 50-50. But the problem with Space Wolves is, unlike Blood Angels, I can jail them in their deployment zone, right? So when I've got, I really want to go first in that matchup, and I want to scout my Beast Pack up 9 inches. Then I want to go 12 plus possibly in advance, and I just make a wall in front of them. And then I have the units too, because I have so many units in my army of just trash, that I'll just throw 5 Cavalites, I'll throw an empty Raider, I'll throw Mandrakes, I'll throw anything I can in front of the gaps in terrain, and I'll just completely block them from going anywhere for like the first 2 to 3 turns. And it just becomes, can I kill, the 3 big blobs of wolves in like the first 3 to 4 turns? Because if I can't, and he still has like maybe 2, like 1.5, 2 of the units left after like 3, 4 turns, I'm not going to win. But it's the fact that I can really jail them in as well. It really depends on who goes first, to be honest.
Wolves also have a couple pretty good tricks in that matchup. The Wolves themselves are mounted, and a lot of Drukhari's anti-infantry, so your Cabalites that are normally trying to pick at stuff start not really doing anything at all. The Haywire don't do anything at all in that matchup, so you're really limited to the Dark Lances and the Incubi that are like really capable of dealing damage. And then the Scourge also have an issue where Space Wolves have a strat for -1 to hit and wound, which is sort of gross because hitting on 5s rerolling is not reliable at all, if Dark Lances could ever be called reliable. And then they also have a Blood Surge move, and Drukhari are one of those armies where, like he said, he's got a lot of garbage units, but you can't really pick apart a unit with a Blood Surge, because, you do an activation, you do 4, 5, 6 damage, and then they move d6 inches and they get in combat and you can't shoot them anymore. So Space Wolves, especially going first, like you said, do have some things to mitigate ways that Drukhari want to be dealing with them.
And then, yeah, I can just go down basically I can go down the matchups at the GT, right? So round 1, I played into Monkat Tao. Is actually a Gem guy, John from Gem, super nice guy. It sounded like a little bit of a newer player. He's playing Monkat Tao. I have like probably 20 reps into playing Monkat Tao between
Who could have done this?
The local meta, everybody just runs Monkat Tao. We have so many local Tao players, so I know the matchup really, really well. I know what needs to go down first, and I know, unless I just get simply outplayed, I do understand just how to beat it with my Drukhari. So that was 161 win round 1 on Linchpin. I then played GSC, another Gem guy, Jeff, super nice guy. He's playing Muscle Beach, Biosantic Brood Surge, Scorched Earth. I had never played GSC before. It was the only army I'd never played. So I basically just saw all of his T3 bodies, and I was like, look, I'm just going to kill like 4 to 5 units a turn. And if he rolls to get them back, like he rolls to get them back. I'm just going to take board control early. I'm going to kill as many units as I can. I don't know if that was the right option, and he told me it wasn't after the game, but that's just what I did. Early, he was rolling everything. Like, I think I went first. He deployed a lot of stuff out in the open, because obviously, he's just banking on getting them back. So, I go first. I killed like 4, maybe 5 units. And I think I killed 5, and I think he got 4 of the 5 back. So I was like, okay, this is how this is going to go, right? And then, but I just basically just kept pressuring up the board. I wouldn't let him deep strike anything. Like, basically every time he was bringing a unit back in, it was in his back line. Because I had my units pushed so far up the table. Because I just have that mobility and, I have the, units to do it. So, like, he was getting a lot of his units back every turn, and then later in the game he started failing the rolls to get them back, but it was just the fact that I just took early board control and I just wouldn't let him bring his units in, even in the midfield. It was like all basically on the back of the table. So I did end up winning that one 90-68. Great game, good guy, Jeff. Round 3, drew Dark Angels. Somehow I've never played the Gladius Deathwing Knight build. I've somehow just dodged it over and over again. So I really didn't know what to think. It was on take and hold too, so I was like, oh man, if he gets those knights on, I'm not going to be able to shift them. He's probably going to score 15s. Sort of an odd game. He deploys his Land Raider out in the open. I go first. I pop out with the Haywire Scourge. They did 18 dev wounds to the Land Raider. They open it up turn 1. He's got his guys just sitting in his back line, and they move, like 5 inches? So, he obviously didn't expect to lose the Land Raider turn 1. And then I've got the Beast Pack, pushed up as far as they can, just kind of in a line, blocking him from getting to the center. So, he's already kind of a little bit frustrated because I popped his Land Raider turn 1. He goes to his turn, he sets up a charge to clear the Beast Pack screen. It's like a 4 or 5 inch charge. He fails it. He re-rolls. He fails the re-roll, and then he just kind of looks at the dice, looks at me, and he's like, this game's over. And I'm like, yeah, like in my head, I'm like, yeah, it is over because he screened out for another turn for getting to the middle because he can't clear the Beast Pack. I'm going to score a 15. His back line was open. I was going to deep strike a Venom back there and kill his Calidus. That was the only thing on his home. Like, he's going down to 0. I'm getting 15, and he's still screened for another turn for the Beast Pack. In my head, I'm like, yeah, game's probably over. But I'm like, well, let's just see what happens, But he didn't want to continue, I could tell he was just done. So I was like, all right, we'll call it. So we just called it like that, 100-point win. So it was a bit of a sour, turn for day 1. But, I'm going into day 2, 3-0. I wanted to play the matchup, but, he was just done. He did end up dropping too. So, nothing like malicious. He wasn't like cursing me out or anything. He was just, I could just tell that he was just done at that point of the day. Sometimes I feel like people just, they're just done after something happens. So I could feel it. I kind of just got my stuff together, and that was it for day 1. But so at the end of day 1, I'm sitting there at dinner dinner, right? And I'm thinking in my head, like, the only army I don't want to play is Blood Angels. I think there was Knights, Blood Angels, and Demons at that point. And I really didn't want to play Chaos Demons either, but I thought I had a matchup into it because it was all Slanesh. So a lot of it was like, Preston played the list, so I felt like I had it was like probably more like a 50-50. I didn't really know the matchup like that, but I know the matchup at Blood Angels, and I know the guy Don playing Blood Angels. Good guy, I like Don a lot. But I had just played him at RRTT the week before, and he like 90-40'd me with the same list. So I just really didn't want to play him. And then we get the pair. I'm sitting there at dinner, and we get the pairing, and I pair into Don's Blood Angels, and I'm like, oh man. I thought like I had a chance to obviously win this GT. And that was like the one army I didn't want to play.
Icing on the cake, it's on Purge the Foe.
Yeah, it's on Purge the Foe, which is, you can just think about the amount of T3 bodies and trash units I have, and you can, deduce that that's not a great mission for me. So, I mean, all I can say is, heck of a game. Probably one of the best games I've ever played. Don's super nice guy. I like playing against. I'd never played against Don except for the week before when I played his Blood Angels and he beat me at the RTT. But basically, I took what I learned from the RTT game. I really just threw everything at him at the RTT game because it's an RTT. What's there to lose? I know it's a bad matchup, so I just threw everything at him. The main piece of tech though that the Blood Angels have is the Sanguinor, right? Because Incubi are T3, 1 wound, right? And the Sanguinor has like 8, 10 attacks. He comes in and interrupts the fight when you charge. So basically, like, a unit of Incubi is basically just dead on arrival when the Sanguinor comes in. And when you're banking on having those 2 units do the bulk of your damage across a game, it's really frustrating that you just can't do anything about it, like he just you charge with Incubi, he comes in, he fights first, there's no way to get around it. It's not like it's a unit with fight first and you can avoid him or you can pin him in. He just comes out of deep strike, joins the fight, and kills more than half your Incubi squad. And there's nothing you can do about it. So that's the main tech piece. But I felt like the big play of the game was I charge a unit of scouts with Scourge. I know that the scouts are not going to die to the Scourge, but it's the Haywire Scourge. He doesn't have any vehicles. They're basically useless in the matchup. I'm just doing it to tie him up so he can't pick him up, right? So he actually interrupts with the Sanguinor in that fight instead of saving them for the Incubi. And I think that was something that I really just wasn't expecting. He was trying to save his scouts. They did obviously kill the Scourge, but I was really just expecting him to throw the Sanguinor into the Incubi. So now I have both units of Incubi that can really deal with the Marines. Super tight game, super close game. It really came down to like turn 4. He's got the Calidus. I tied her up with a Venom. We both forgot about the Calidus' new rule where you can roll the dice, and if she gets, if you roll like a 4 or higher, she can back off and get picked up. So he had already drawn his secondaries. He had forgot to do the roll to see if she gets picked up or whatever. I would have let him do it personally if he had asked me like, oh hey, I forgot to roll the dice, see if the Calidus can get picked up, but I already drew my secondaries. He didn't ask me, but if he had asked me, I would have let him do it, because I forget things too, whatever. But he didn't ask me, to his credit, he didn't ask me. He just said, you know what, I gotta roll with it. I'm not gonna pick the Calidus up because, I already drew my secondaries. So good, obviously good on him, sportsmanship and whatnot, for, just rolling with it. But I do think that I don't know that I'm not going to say it cost him the game because he did draw like Storm Hostile and I forget what the other one was, and I had my back open and just stickied because I had forgot she could do that too. So it may have swung the game, may not have, but I ended up winning the game by 6 points. And at that point, when I looked over across the table, I saw Knights winning on table 2. I had a pretty good idea that I was going to win because, Knights is a very favorable matchup. So we go into round 5. It's against Imperial Knights. Super nice guy again, Abe, and his Imperial Knights. Like, he's got 3 bigs, 5 littles, which is like the most favorable against me. Like, it gets kind of tricky when there's like 11 little knights, just the volume and bringing down so many a turn. But it really is just fairly easy when they have like 3 bigs, 5 littles, because the littles just get taken down by Dark Lances, and then you shoot the bigs with the Haywire, and then you pick them up with the Incubi. That's basically just what I did. After the first 2 turns, I had killed like 2 big knights, 3 little knights. So we just called it a game there. We chit-chatted back and forth. Super nice guy. We actually watched the end of a football game because it was Sunday. And he just said, hey, game's over. I've got 1 knight. He's in my deployment zone, So that was the run there. I ended up getting first place. Super happy with that. It did feel like, I had been working all edition towards that GT run because I'd gone to Carolina Open about a month before. I got third place, lost a super close game, and I had just been improving. Making better lists, tweak here or there, and it was good to finally get over that hump and get the win. And now it's opened up other things because now I feel like I got my win. It's towards the end of the season here. Maybe I'll just start playing something else for fun. So that's basically my GT story.
Very cool. So, how would you have played your matchup differently, say, into Mason and my army? We play war leaders, very melee. Sometimes we have shooting, sometimes you don't. Ideally, we're looking to go first. I'm looking to run up the board. How would you deal with that?
Right. So basically, my plan against World Eaters is delay. Basically, what it looks like is I'll infiltrate a unit or possibly even two of the Mandrakes, just basically giving them up to stop your infiltrators from getting in my DZ like turn one. And then if I go first, great. I'm gonna scout the beast pack forward, move them, possibly even advance them, and just make a wall. Like you're gonna be in your deployment zone turn one, and you're gonna be fighting off that screen. If I don't go first, I still probably put the beast pack up as far as they can go, and then we're probably around the middle at that point. And yeah, you'll be able to clear that screen, but you're not going to get past the middle. Like you're basically keeping you out of my deployment zone turn one with all the scouts and the advance and charge and all that jazz. And then it's really just putting trash units in front of you to stop you from getting into the good units, while picking you apart behind that with dark lances, splinter cannons, and the incubi every once in a while, like once a turn coming out and killing a unit. And it has been, I feel like the matchup into World Eaters is a good one for Drukhari.
That's fair. That's seems about right for what I've seen with world leaders and very heavy shooty armies. So let's go back to the start of the edition when you only had the one index. What was your feeling about Real Space Raiders at that point?
I actually thought Real Space Raiders was good. I mean, I won several RTTs with Real Space Raid, and I placed 10th or 11th at Mayhem with Real Space Raid. I felt like it just wasn't fun. That was the main thing, because it was just how many Dark Lances can I pack into a list, and can I roll 4-ups to hit when I'm re-rolling everything. I had quite a bit of success. I have about the same win rate with Real Space Raid as I do with Sky Splinter. It's like right around 80%, and it's just not a lot of fun to play because there's not a lot of. It's all like I don't want to interact with you. I want to pop back with Strike and Fade or with the Scourge or with Venoms. And then it's like I'll go take your home objective with 5 idiots because I can move 17 inches out of a Venom, and then Strike and Fade 8 with 10 OC on 5 guys, and I'll go take your objective, and then yeah, you'll kill my 5 guys and maybe the Venom too, but I've got 6 more where that came from, so I can just do it for 5 turns. It just wasn't fun. It was non-interactive. You never really got a chance to interact with me unless you have indirect, and then I just lose. It just wasn't a whole lot of fun compared to Sky Splinter, which I think is a lot more fun for both players, because I actually do want to interact with you. I want to come out, kill you with a melee unit with incubi. Yeah, I'll get back in, but then you have the opportunity to come get me, and we kind of go back and forth trading. Whereas Real Space Raid was kind of just how can I win the game without interacting with you?
So as far as your current detachments, then knowing that an index is hopefully, or a codex rather, is hopefully coming next year at some point, what do you want to see added to Drukhari? What would you like to see as an index? Do you want to see something new, or you think your current indexes are pretty much going to be where they're going to be left running, or how does it feel to you?
So detachments, what I'd really like to see is basically kind of how they had it in 9th, where you get there's the 3 key unit types in Drukhari. So you got your Coven, which is your Talos, Kronos, Grotesques, Rax, the Homunculus. You got the Cabal units, which is the Archon, the Cabalites, the Scourge, stuff like that. And then you got the Witch Cult stuff, which is the 3rd one, which would be the Succubus or Lilith, and the Witches and the Hellions, which are terrible right now. No one uses, unfortunately. So what I'd really like to see is give each section of the index their own detachment, right? So give us a Witch Cult detachment, give us a Coven detachment, and give us a Cabal. Well, I guess Sky Splinter is basically your Cabal detachment. But I don't really. The thing, my personal pet peeve about Real Space Raid is like how it forces you to take one of each. So it forces you to take the Archon, the Succubus, and the Homunculus if you want all the pain tokens. Where I think the army really functions well if you lean into the whole archetype, kind of like how demons, like if you lean into like, Slanesh or into Nurgle, it's really cool and they get all these buffs. And like that's kind of something that I'm looking for. Hopefully, with, I want to run a Witch Cult attachment where it's all about like speed, and it's basically like playing Harlequins, or, the Coven attachment would be like everybody gets a, like +1 to their feel no pain, and like you can actually stay on the table. And if you look at, if their models look at mine, I just don't pick them up, like something like that would be really fun, I think.
What else do we want to hit on here? Anything else you want to talk about specifically with Drukhari? We kind of touched on point increases.
Yeah, so we can go over like real quick just because I haven't pulled up. Basically, units that went up: Archon, Beast Pack, Court of the Archon, Drazar for some reason went up. I don't see that, but okay. Hellions went down. They're still not good. Incubi went up. Reavers up 5, it looks like. Mandrake's up 5. Lilith up. I agree with all of these except for Drazar. Like, I don't know. Drazar's just out here catching strays, I guess. I don't really know why he went up. No one's using him. He's still bad. The Archon's still better. The Archon's the same points as Drazar, and Drazar gives him +1 to wound. The Archon re-rolls their wound, and you already get +1 when you get out of a transport, so like I don't see why you would ever run Drazar, and I don't know why he got nerfed. But yeah, points are the points. I think everything that went up other than Drazar, probably deserved to go up. I think 15 on the Beast Pack, kind of steep for what it does, but yeah, I mean, no arguments. I think we deserved probably to lose a unit. So
Going back to the Beast Pack, they're at 120 now, right? Like you said, it is a little steep, but I think it's got actually a pretty decent price point in that if you want what the Beast Pack does, you will pay the 120 for it and you won't feel bad. You're not going to see people taking 3 of them just because it's at that price point. And it's also like not unreasonable to drop a Beast Pack, I think, if you just don't value what it brings.
I think if you're looking for like a pressure melee list, you probably take out the Beast Pack at 120, and that gives you, a Raider and an extra, half an Incubi unit. But I think if you're looking to play like a trading 5-turn game like I'm looking to play, I think you're definitely still taking it.
So do you have a unit that you feel is low-key really good that people don't seem to be using, or is it pretty much the same list you see, everywhere?
I think Talos would probably qualify. I think a lot of the lists. I think the main different thing. I actually remember was it after Carolina Open? I think it was like the Goonhammer article, Preston, where he was like, "Oh, he has the cheeky Talos." So basically, I've been on the Talos train for a long time. I think 1 unit of 2 of them just with the Haywire, and with a pain token they're 833, 5 attacks each in melee, so you're getting 10 attacks at 833 in melee. And they're T7. The main thing is I take them for like the beef, right? Like so they're really the only thing in the index that could potentially sit on the center objective and live for a turn. They're T7, 7 wounds, 3 up, 6 up with a 5 of feel no pain. So when you got the unit of 2, you actually have like a legitimate chance of living out in the open on an objective for a turn. And there's really nothing else in the index that offers, like, you could argue, like, I tested the Court of the Archon with 10 Cablites, but they still just die. Like, yeah, like, it's nice to have -1 to wound, and, but when you're T3 1 wound, like, you will just die, even if there's 15. So, like, the Talos offers something that really nothing else in the index offers, which is the chance to live on I mean, I'm not even going to say it's a great chance, but, like, it's a chance to live on an objective for a turn, without getting shot off. And that's, like, the main reason I'm taking them, but also the other reason is, like, they do just mess something up, like, if they get in combat, and then, the twin-linked Haywire on top, too, is great for the vehicles in this meta as well.
And how about the contrary to that? What's the unit you're never taking because it's terrible?
I think Hellions would probably qualify. Although at 75 points for 5 now, because they went down again. They've gone down, I think, 3 times. Maybe I'll have to look at them again. but the problem is they're mounted, and in an army where you have so many infantry options that move 8 inches or more, and can really dish out some damage, it's like, why would you take something that's mounted that you has to go around terrain? They're still T3, they still die super easily, and then you're not even getting the movement out of them. That's something like the infantry gives you because you have to go around terrain. And they're like AP2 1 damage in combat, so like that's just not good. They're just not good.
You said they're T3, I thought they were T4.
They may be T4, yeah. That tells you like how little I looked at them, but yeah.
That fits. So, I mean, do you feel the factions? I mean, obviously, it's what, top four, like a 54% win rate currently. Outside of that, I mean, do you feel the faction's in a good spot right now, or do you think that it needs to be hit just a little bit and be brought back down to that around 50% win rate?
I think you're really going to find out in like the next couple of weeks, to be honest with you. I think if you see a resurgence in indirect at top tables, which I think we might be looking at now with the Exorcists, and I still think that other armies have good indirect, or at least, like if I was playing Guard, I probably still take one indirect package just to, just for those armies that have something that's weak that they want to sit back and hit you with all game. And then obviously Aquilons, that those are going to be really bad for Drukhari. And I think what you're going to see with Drukhari now is like you're going to see a lot of people going like 4-1, 5-1, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of people winning GTs now. Because we just don't have, I think, the matchup into Sisters if they're taking indirect, or Guard if they're taking Aquilons, which is going to be, every Guard list now. There's just a couple armies at the top that are really just going to gatekeep Drukhari now, I think. So I think they're in a good spot overall. I think the win rate will probably still stay fairly high, but I just think you're just not going to see a lot of events.
So higher win rate, and then some of the upper tier armies falling down, like Thousand Suns maybe, and others that got a really decent points hike.
Yeah, like I think T-Suns really got hit hard, and I think that combined with the previous nerf to where you can't fire the indirect flamers, and then plus you're losing like a character and a unit. Like I said, I don't really, I haven't played a game since the points drops. I haven't played at an event. We've got an RTT coming up this weekend. We'll see what happens, but I think it's going to take like a week, 2, maybe 3 weeks to really find out where Drukhari fits in this new meta. Because there has been a lot of changes. Because like Sisters got hit really hard with the points, but if these new points hikes are gonna cause them to go into indirect, that's actually worse for Drukhari. Like I would have rather played them at the old points and then not take the indirect than play them at the new points and then that force them into taking the indirect.
Emery, is there anything you're hoping to see from GW in terms of just like the game overall? Like if they're gonna do a big update in January, like, and they can change, pretty much anything because they're doing a big update. Like, what's something you'd like to see?
My main issue with the game right now is just the amount of actions in Pariah. I'm just not a big fan of like having to do 2, 3. I even have an army that can do it, right? I just think it's sort of non-interactive. At some games feel sort of non-interactive. Playing Drukhari and playing in an edition where you can just outscore your opponent by doing actions. Because I feel like in a lot of games, like if they're playing KG, I just won't interact with them. Like, I just won't move up to try and kill them. Like, if they're playing KG and they're not standing on points. Because I know I'm going to outscore them because I have the units to do these, like, 3, sometimes 4 actions a turn. And they don't a lot of the times. So, I'd like to make it more of like, hey, look, you got to go kill, your opponent's army if you want to win the game. Because I feel like sometimes in this, this action-heavy, pack that we're in right now, it's just sometimes you just really just don't. You can just outscore them. So one thing I could go over is, like, when I get to a lot of tables, the first thing I ask people is, have you played Drukhari before, and do you know how they work? And, like, I'd say, like, 75% of the time, they'll tell me, like, oh, I've never played them before. I have no idea what they do. And then I basically have to go down the spiel of like, hey, these are my stratagems. This is what I'm trying to do. These are the things I can do. Like, hey, I can move, 17 inches out of this, raider and then charge you and then get back in the raider. So I feel like a lot of people are just super unfamiliar with like the way Drukhari works. And one thing that I've learned, playing the game is the best thing you can do to put yourself in a position to win a game is like you have to understand how your opponent's army works. I think it's one thing to know how your army works, and you might be like the best person ever at piloting your army, but if you don't understand how your opponent's army works, and what they're trying to do, chances are you're not going to win that game because you can't anticipate what they're trying to do, and you'll never see, when I've got my boat parked, 22 24 inches away, you never see that coming to, kill your unit of guys over here until you see it coming, right? Until I bring the boat out, get the guys out, and I charge you. And if you haven't seen that before, if you haven't seen the output of Scourge before, chances are you're not going to be able to, even if you're the best person at piloting your army, you're not going to be able to prepare for that. So basically, what I wanted to kind of go over is like, well, what can you do to beat Drukhari, right? So, if it's cool with you guys, I'll just, for a minute, I'll go over, what I think you can do, like what the best strategies to actually face Drukhari are, if that's cool with you guys.
We're not talking about orcs. I think we're good.
So the main thing is, obviously, if you have, you're in a good spot if you have any indirect in your list, right? And I'm not advocating for people to put indirect in their list. I think indirect's the bane of my existence, and I don't like it in the game, right? But obviously, if you have any indirect, you need to, as soon as possible, kill the Scourge. Because if you don't have a way to interact with the Scourge, like you don't have a way to go dig them out, or shoot them, or fire indirect at them, or run something that's fast up, tie them up. If you don't have a way to do that, they will just sit there for 5 turns, pop out, shoot your best stuff, and then pop back behind the wall. So if you have a way to deal with the Scourge, even if it's going to cost you, a unit of just sending that unit up to get to them, you have to do it, right? Because as soon as those Scourge are down, really the anti-tank is down, other than the Incubi. The second point would be, if you can get a beat on a transport, you have to put the transports down as soon as possible. Because the whole army functions out of the transports in Sky Splinter. So it's the mobility, it's the threat projection, it's the not getting blown off the table, it's everything in Sky Splinter is the transports. Whether it's the venom for the Cabalites, or whether it's the the Raider for the Incubi, everything keys off of the transports. And you even get the boosts out of the transports too. So not only is it for movement, threat projection, 10 Incubi with Lance is a lot more scary than just 10 Incubi, right? And the only way you get Lance is if you're getting out of the transport. So, they're only strength 4 in combat, Incubi are. But when they're getting Lance, and they're re-rolling hits and wounds, that's really when they shine, right? Because they can take down a big knight in combat, 10 Incubi and Archon. When they get out, they're getting Lance, and then you're re-rolling hits and wounds. I've seen it happen, right? So basically what you got to do is you got to demech them as soon as possible. I've seen a lot of armies where like they have the ability to go demech them, but they just won't. They'll play the conservative game against Drukhari. But the thing is that you have to know is, I can basically always get to you, but if you can get to me first, you have to push the envelope to demech and really tie up the Drukhari. Because almost nothing, I don't think anything in the index for Drukhari falls back and shoots, or falls back and charges. So, I've played lots of games where Preston will just throw whatever he can into the Scourge to charge them, right? Whether it's what's that little ship that flies forward like 14 inches and scouts?
The Piranha.
Those damn piranhas.
The Piranha, the remnants of a squad that got shot by Cabalites, an empty transport.
Anything. Like, if you have anything that could potentially reach the Scourge, or a ship, or anything, it doesn't need to kill it. If it dies next turn, fine. As long as it's not one of your key units. But if you can send anything into, those key units, like the ship with the Incubi or the Scourge, and tie them up even for a turn, it's just a turn that you're not getting shot by them, or I can't send the Raider out 17 inches and go get you, I talk about sending the Beast Pack up to give myself breathing room. I almost never see other people, when I'm playing against them, try to give their army breathing room by tying up some of my units. The threat projection is really how the army works, but if you can tie up those key units, and start taking out some of those key units, it really hits like a wet noodle. If I'm down like 2 units of Scourge, and I don't have, Incubi, or they're not nearby, or you've tied up the ship, the rest of the army really hits like a wet noodle. You can pop off here and there with the Cabalites and whatnot, but if you don't have those key units and you're really looking to make a push and you've successfully tied up some of those units or taken them out, I think that's where you're going to see that you can really start taking the board control against Drukhari. And when I have really lost games and whatnot, I go back and think about it and I'm like, wow, they typically it's because the opponent played aggressive. You cannot sit back and play a 5-turn game with Drukhari because one, I'll outscore you because I have the units to do so, and two, I'll just pick you apart for 5 turns, and then by turn 5, I might have 1,500 to 1,000 points left, and you're gonna have like 500 to 0 points left if you're gonna play a 5-turn game with me. Anytime I've played, I play a lot of people and they want to feed me like a unit a turn. They want to come to the center, one unit a turn and feed me. I'll just sit back and say, okay, I'm going to win this game, because if you just keep feeding me like a unit a turn and not like really getting aggressive and trying to take board control and whatnot, I can kill a unit of anyone's army in a turn. I don't care what it is. If you're only going to feed me one unit, I don't care what it is, I can put it down. But where it really gets tricky is if you start pressuring Drukhari with like 2, 3 good units, in one turn, and you start breaking the lines and tying stuff up like I talked about, that's when things start getting really, really tricky as a Drukhari player.
So 2 things I'll mention. One, going back to Hellions, they can hit and run. They can shoot and declare a charge when they fall back. So you got 1 unit they can at least.
Hey, yeah.
Not that anybody's going to run them, but, maybe. Then my second point is, so for people that are interested in Drukhari and, like elves for some unknown reason, although I guess they're the better elves, how would you go about starting the army? The current combat patrol, before the new index comes out and they redo the combat patrol and make it worse, is the current combat patrol good? Good value?
Oh yeah. If you went to a store and you bought 2 combat patrols, you have like really like missing maybe like 4 units, but like everything that comes in the combat patrol is usable, and everything that's in the combat patrol was in my GT list. So you get a Raider, you get a Ravager, you get 10 Cabalites, you get an Archon, and you get, I believe it's 5 Incubi. So basically, if you were to go get 2 combat patrols, you could have either 2 Raiders and 2 Ravagers or 4 Raiders. You'd have 20, I think it actually comes with 20 Cabalites. It might be 20 instead of 10. So you'd have either 20 or 40 Cabalites. You'd have 10 Incubi and 2 Archons. Like, obviously, the 2 Archons there, whatever. I would just use the one with the 10. But yeah, 2 combat patrols is the way to go. And then from there, I would just supplement with... the thing is like, you basically, if you're going to get 2 combat patrols, you could either decide to go, hey, I'm going to go 3 Ravagers instead of the Scourge, which is viable, but I just like the Scourge better personally because they can strike and fade, but they do the same thing. They shoot Dark Lances. And then, you'd want to supplement that with buying a couple of Venoms. Maybe you want to buy like the new Mandrakes. They're super cool, super useful. And then the main thing is like the Beast Pack. What do you do about the Beast Pack? They don't sell them anymore. There's a really cool 3D prints options out there for them. Most of mine are 3D printed, but yeah, like the main thing I would say is like a lot of people discourage people from starting Drukhari because they're like, oh, it's a high player gap, or you can't buy a lot of the models. But I think the GW's done a really good job with updating models for the codexes and whatnot. And really the units that are hard to find aren't really like the staples to the army. The only exception would have been Mandrakes, but they just came out with a new box. So, you don't need a Court of the Archon. You don't need Urian Rakarth. You don't even need a Beast Pack. The majority of the line is readily available. The Combat Patrol is a really good deal in my opinion. And I would say like those would be like your go-to would be like the Combat Patrol and maybe a couple of Venoms and, Scourge if you want to go that route.
Not to mention secondhand, because someone's always going to be selling something.
Oh, yeah, yep. And what I've seen, too, is, like, there's always Drukhari at, like, the used shelf, at least locally. There's always, like, Cabalites. There's always Archons, no matter where you go, because you get one in every Combat Patrol. There's usually, like, Witches, Racks, so you can find stuff cheap. Used as well.
And based on your comment earlier, I kind of know how you feel about proxies and 3D prints, which is cool because a lot of us do 3D printing in this hobby. So it's always a good way to maybe play a model that, like you said, you just can't buy these days because it just doesn't exist anymore.
Oh yeah, like the Beast Pack doesn't exist. They do not make it. They don't sell it. So that's really the only way to play that unit.
Are they Finecast, Forge World, or what are they?
They were Finecast, but they don't sell them anymore on the website.
And is there, or rather, are there any actual Forge World Drukhari bits that are, that see play, or do you actually have any Forge World?
The Tantalus.
Yeah, so the Party Bus, the Tantalus would be the only thing that really qualifies as, I guess, Forge World and gets played. I personally don't have one. I would like to own one, but they're very expensive, they're hard to build, and it's like more of a meme than anything else. I mean, I do think that they're like okay, like they're playable, but it's just like basically like if you put two raiders together is basically a Tantalus. It's just like a big ship. It holds 16. It's got firing deck 16. The meme is it basically has built-in tank shock, like that's its ability. So if you played Real Space Raid, you could basically charge it in tank shock, do its ability for tank shock. You could spend a CP to tank shock, and then if you had it loaded up with racks, there's a stratagem that if you on the charge, if you have racks inside, it's basically every you roll like I think it's like for every model you have inside, you roll a dice, and for every 5 up, it's a mortal wound. But if they're racks, it's a 4 up. So you can potentially do like, grenades or tank shock's capped at 6. The ability's capped at 6, and I think the other one's capped at 6. So you could do basically up to, 18 mortal wounds on the charge if you had 2 CP.
It also was the most egregious purveyor of the new pivot rule way back when pivot was free for flying vehicles, because the thing's like 8 inches long.
So you could get probably like a 3-inch charge at a deep strike or something, like some nonsense like that.
Now you have to pay 2 inches. It still does gain distance. The pivot, conundrum has just sort of died down, though, in general. People are generally playing it how it is intended to be played, I've seen. I don't see a lot of people trying to cheese stuff out of reserves anymore, or things like that, just because it's really not worth it a lot of the time.
Anything we left out about Drukhari that we want to touch on?
I will say that, a really good, if you're looking to get into Drukhari and play them, a really good thing to check out would be Scari's YouTube channel. Scary makes really good YouTube or Drukhari content. He's super positive, even when they were in a bad spot. He was super positive about them. He goes into detail of how to play them. And then if you want coaching and stuff like that, he has it obviously. But just small plug for him because he makes good Drukhari content. He's really the only Drukhari creator that I know of, and he's kind of who I was watching when I got into it. So yeah, throw that in there.
Another way, if you want to try Drukhari out, but you maybe don't want to drop the coin, there's this thing called Tabletop Simulator, where, you can play with other people online and test different armies out. That would also be a good way to do it, I think. Especially if you just want to steal Emery's list and give it a shot. Preston, anything you want to ask that we haven't touched on?
As a hobby army, how's Drukhari? Because I've seen your models, and I know you put a lot of effort into them, and your army is very, very well done. It's all put together. Are there any models that you hated, or are there anything that you really enjoyed doing?
I mean, the main thing is just make sure you have enough double, triple, zero brushes, because all of the models are tiny. I will say that if you don't have the best eyesight, or you want to paint your army well, but you're maybe not the greatest painter, maybe it's not the army for you, because every single model is an inch tall, and it's super detailed, and it's super, super small. The amount of, triple zero brushes that I've used painting this army is kind of obscene. But other than that, it's super cool. There's a lot of conversion options too, because I feel like Drukhari is one of the more highly converted armies, just because some of the lack of models and the options, a lot of the I still want to make a Archon out of one of the Vampire Courts models. I think a lot of those are really cool. I've looked at using the Magus from GSC as a female Archon. I think that'd be really cool. And then my army is just box art, so it's when I walked in the GW store and I saw the Cabal the Black Heart scheme, I really liked it. So there's a lot of good tutorial videos on painting them the Cabal the Black Heart scheme. It's mainly just Incubi Darkness, and then highlights of different greens and whatnot. But you also kind of get 3 armies in one if you're going with the Real Space Raid vibe, because you get the Coven, which are basically completely different models. They're all the basically Frankenstein, flesh-shaped things, and some of those models actually are bigger, you talk about the Talos and the Kronos. And then you get the Cabal, which is like the ships and the little warriors and all that. And then you get the Witch Cult, which is like mine are painted pink, and Lilith is bright pink, and the girls are pink, and they've got pink hair, and it's fun because it's not green, like the rest of the army, and it's cool, and if you ever get bored with painting, that green scheme, because you see a lot of the armies, it's like they're all, the scheme is the scheme, and that's the color of the scheme, but like the girls don't really fit into that scheme, and they look cool on the table when it's like you got this boat full of pink girls, and they got pink hair, and then you got these little guys over here, next to them, and I just think that looks cool. And then you get the hobby side with like the gore, and you can play around with the blood for the blood god paint, like on the grotesques and the Talos and the Chronos, and I had a lot of fun with that too. So I think it's a really fun army for hobby. I think there's a lot of options you can do. I think there's a lot of conversions you could potentially do. I do think it's probably one of the more difficult armies to paint well, just because of the size of the models, but I think it's it was a good time.
I would like to say I feel a little bit called out here. Bad eyesight, can't paint well. I mean, I really feel like I'm being called out.
It's okay. You can continue to drown your models in corn red paint and some black highlights.
I have 2 Painted Sisters models that are not drowned in red, okay? They're drowned in silver and purple. So I can paint something other than the red. I actually own more than just red paint, I promise.
We'll be the judge of that at the end of the next month.
I mean, it's the stuff I'm building is going to have red on it. So, I mean, it counts. So you mentioned Grey Knights were your next project, right, Emery?
Yes.
So what draws you to Grey Knights? Do you like the playstyle of the current index? Are you looking for something, or from the current detachment rather? Are you looking for something new from, whenever they actually get some sort of codex?
Really just because it's like the exact opposite of Drukhari. I thought about my next army, and I was just kind of like, I like Drukhari a lot, and I'm going to continue to play it, obviously, but sometimes it would be nice to have a break from moving like 100 models around every game, and so like kind of just the eliteness, I was looking at Custodes, but obviously like their index or their codex just doesn't look fun, but I just wanted to play something that like was tough, had a chance of surviving on an objective, didn't have 100 models, but then still had some of the like the brain capacity movement shenanigans that the Drukhari have, and then with the Grey Knights, it's like, they get these tough units, but then you have the army rule where you can pick them up, you can move them around, you get a lot of cool enhancements where like you can, sigil and you can miss, and there is like, it's not just, hey, let me put these models on the table and see if they survive. You actually get to do some thinking in there as well. So that's kind of what, just basically like if I want to, I don't think I'll ever play Grey Knights competitively, but and competitively I mean like at a GT, I'll take them out to an RTT. I did like 2 weeks ago. But, it's just like if I want to break from playing 100 models and like really thinking hard and doing stuff, and I want to just take something that's like 40 models and like basically 6 squads to an RTT and just mess around, and I'm just trying to paint them up nice and have them look good, and if I just want to break from playing my Drukhari, I'll take them out for a spin.
So other than 40K, do you dabble in any of the other GW games, Age of Sigmar, Kill Team, any of the other little smaller games?
I don't. I do have 2 fully painted kill teams. Just because I have the Mandrakes one and I have the Hand of the Archon Gabalites one. Just because I use them for 40K. So I could, but I really I do enjoy the longer games and the competitiveness of 40K and whatnot. I do think that the models of Age of Sigmar look super cool, but it just really always seemed like it's not quite as competitive as 40K, and like I really enjoy the competitive part of it.
Remember, send all the hate mail to him? We did not say that. But yeah, I mean, I get that. 40K definitely has a more vigorous competitive scene, I think, than Age of Sigmar does, although with 4.0 being out, I think that's going up a titch these days. I'm seeing a lot more tournaments run, and although they run into a few of the issues we did at the start of the edition, like their ghosts that seem to never die and always win all the games. I think Age of Sigmar is going to be up there as far as competitive, though, but 40K is more players, more models, more armies, and I think just overall just more competitive. Last question I have personally is, so we're about a year and a half in. We got about 18 months left of this edition, assuming that 11th comes out at the same time. About a 3-year window here. We have just about half the codexes available. How do you feel about that now that we're about halfway through? Would you have expected more codexes out, like rather than, I don't know, having a break from Blood Angels for like 3 months and nothing new? How do you feel about that? Because we have opinions.
I really don't have a outlined opinion because this is the first edition that I've really played. So like I don't really know how it should go. The one thing that I'll say is like I felt like I would be really upset if I was a Drukhari player still and I only could play Real Space Raid. So I think that they did a really good job with giving like a few armies that really just didn't have a fun index, like a new detachment at least, while we wait for the codex. Because if I was still playing Real Space Raid, I mean, I probably wouldn't be still playing Real Space Raid at this point. I probably would have moved on to another army because it just wasn't that fun. But when they dropped Sky Splinter for Drukhari, it really got me interested in it more because it was so much fun. So, and I think they did that for a couple other, I think it was at least one other army. So I will say, like, in the meantime, while you're waiting, that's awesome that they did that. Obviously, it'd be cool to see like more codexes be out, but I also think that like if they're just gonna rush them, they're gonna be bad. Then I'd almost rather wait until later to get it so that it's like actually good and like thought through.
We've had some zingers for codexes though this year, over the past year. Custodes being one of them that's not so great.
Oh yeah.
GSC getting stomped, which was not so great. We've definitely had some up and down codexes. So I'm curious to see at what point they started to write your codex, because that seems to be important. Emery, last thoughts? Anything you want to add that you haven't said? Anything that comes top of mind for your new player that wants to get into GTs, for regardless of the army, since you have a good amount of experience with RTTs and GTs.
I would say if you're a newer player and you're building up your army, you want to get into the competitive scene, I would say like go step out into your local meta, like go play at some RTTs, go talk to whatever if you have local clubs, you have guys, whatnot, go try to get in some games like locally before you go to like that GT, or before you try to like really dive into it, like get into your local meta, find a friend that you can pick up games with, once a week or something. It just, if you're like, I didn't go to my first GT until like maybe I had played in maybe like 10 RTTs before I even went to my first GT. I just remember like being at my first GT, like being so happy that like I knew my army front and back. I knew what I need to do, because it's like a whole nother level when you go from RTT to a GT. Just like, pressure, being nervous at GT. There's so many more people there, hoping that you'll go at least even. I can remember like I went 3-3 in my first GT and I thought it was great, and I can just remember being like, man, if I had come here, like the skill gap was so much higher. I can just remember that like in my head I would be like, man, this would have been really discouraging, I feel like, if I would have came here like before I had played in a few RTTs at least, because I probably would have gotten tabled like every single game. And I know some people just don't care. Like I'm the type of person where like I just I'd rather be like over prepared. It's probably the army in me, but so I would say like try to go out, meet some people, get some pickup games in, go to some RTTs, and then when you feel like your army, you know what you're doing at least, then go out and like try to have fun at a GT.
Yeah, my first GT was the Richmond Open last May, and my first opponent there was Hypercrypt Necrons, and that kind of set the GT for me.
Yep.
It was not a fun time, but very cool. Okay. I think we're good to wrap at this point. We appreciate you coming on to talk about your army. It's always good to get more insight to armies that none of us actively play, so it's really cool to get that information. Otherwise, again, if y'all have any comments, questions, concerns, join the Discord, email us at openplaypodcast@gmail.com. Tell us what armies you're interested in hearing about next. One of the ones I'd like to come up with next is going to be Guard, but beyond that, what do you want to hear us talk about? Because we can definitely pull from the local community, since we have a pretty solid local community here on the East Coast, for people to talk about their armies, what they play, why they play, like Emery did, and just go over all that information. It's really helpful if you're thinking about picking up an army, or if you're even interested in how you fight against said army. Otherwise, do all the usual algorithm stuff. We'd appreciate it if you would, subscribe on YouTube, like us on YouTube, and just spread the podcast wherever you can spread it. Preston, last words.
Goodbye.
Emery?
Go play Drukhari if you're thinking about it. It's cool army, super cool guys. If you're thinking about playing Drukhari, let me be the one to be like, yeah, go buy that combat patrol and go get started.
Get it before they change it and make it worse. How about that?
Hey, that's only up for me.
All right, everybody, have a good week. Have a good set of games, and we'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
See y'all.
Bye.